Okay, so let's take a look at number 2 here. So the product of two consecutive odd numbers is 399. Okay, so it wants you to find the two numbers. Okay, so that's basically like, okay, if I were to look at a number line, and I had 1 here and 3, those would be the consecutive odd numbers, right? So why don't we say that, we could say let x represent the first odd number, right? And then if I look up here, so let's say, and on our number line here, we're going to say the first odd number is going to be x. And then how do I get to the next odd number? It's x plus 2. Okay. Now the other part of this question is what happens when I multiply them together? Their product is 399. Okay. So here's your first number and here's your second. Okay. When we multiply them together, we get 399. So x multiplied by x plus 2 is equal to 399. Okay. Okay. And then all you have to do now is expand, collect like terms, and then we'll work from there. So let's go x squared plus 2x is equal to 399. Okay. And then I'll bring the 399 over. That equals 0. And now I'm in a position to make a decision as to if I want to factor or if I want to use quadratic equation. Okay. If this is factorable, I'm going to factor it and get my values of x. Okay. So let's try and factor it. So it turns out that, and I'll do this quickly for you, but it's no different than any other time you factored. You need to find the two numbers that multiply to 399, but add to positive 2. Okay, so you're just going to go through your numbers. That's obviously not going to work. 2 won't go in, 3 will, and you're just going to keep going until you get to negative 19 and 21. Okay, those two numbers actually satisfy these conditions. Okay, they multiply to negative 399, but they also add to positive 2. Okay, so these are the two numbers I'm going to use. And remember, this is a simple trinomial. And so I'm just going to write the variable in front of these two numbers. Okay, so it's going to be x minus 19 x plus 21 is equal to 0. I'm going to solve for x. X will equal 19. X will equal negative 21. Okay. Now you might get to this point and think, I'm confused because these are two odd numbers, but they're not consecutive. Well, remember what we said up top. Okay, so we're going to have the product of two consecutive odd numbers, right? And they have to multiply to 399. Okay. Now, if you remember, any quadratic, okay, and particularly in this scenario, most, let's say 80% of the time or 90% of the time, a quadratic will have two answers, right? And so if you look at what we wrote at the top, we wrote that x was simply just the first odd number. Okay, so there's actually two sets of numbers that satisfy these conditions, right? Or sorry, that satisfy the fact that they multiply to 399. So if I'm to say x, let's say the first solution where x is equal to 19, then the other number will be 21, right? My second solution says that x is equal to negative 21, then the second number is going to be negative 19 because I have to add 2 to the first number. Okay, so there are your two answers. You have two different, actually there's 4 numbers that satisfy this, right? So you have when x is equal to 19, then the second number is going to be 21, or x can equal negative 21, and the second number can be negative 19. Both of those answers multiply to 399. Okay. So I'll give you a couple more of those in the homework. Okay. And you tell me what the numbers are, right? Okay. So let's go down to number 3 now. Okay. We'll take a look at a shape and how we can relate the area of a shape to its dimensions using quadratics. Okay. So the base of a triangle is 3 centimeters less than its height, okay? And when I read word problems, I think maybe we talked about this with the optimization, I like to read information and stop where there's a period, right? So I just draw lines in. So the base of a triangle is 3 centimeters less than its height, okay? So that just simply means here's the height, right? And here's the base of the triangle. That's nothing new. Okay. And I'm just going to simply do what it says to do. So the base is equal to 3 centimeters less than the height. So I'm going to go h minus 3. Okay. And we can say just to keep it consistent, let h represent the height of the triangle, okay, just so we have that down. Okay, now let's take a look at, well, how do I find the area of a triangle? Area of any triangle, area of a triangle is equal to 1/2 the base times the height. Okay, now it tells me the area of the triangle is 90 centimeters squared. So why don't I write that in right there? Okay. The other piece of information it tells me is about the base of the triangle. So now I can make my substitution here. The base is right here. Base is equal to h minus 3. And then I multiply that by the height. Right? So I'm just going to get 90 is equal to 1/2 of h squared minus 3h. Okay. Now, I could do a little bit of I could multiply the 1/2 in, but that's going to make things a little bit complicated. So why don't I, instead of multiplying the 1/2 into the brackets, why can't I manipulate what's going on? And instead of doing that, why don't I multiply both sides by 2? Right? That's going to result, instead of me having to deal with fractions, because I'm going to end up with a 1/2 in front of h squared, and then I'm going to have a minus 1.5 h. Why don't I multiply by everything by 2 and get rid of the fraction? That just makes things a little bit easier. That ends up being 180 is equal to h squared minus 3h. Now I can bring the 180 over. Okay. And now I can address this as being a question of just, now I need to make up my mind. Am I gonna be able to factor this? Ideally, I'd like to be able to do that. If I can't, then I'm going to use the quadratic equation. Okay, so let's try and factor. So I'm going to need two numbers to multiply to 180 and add to -3. Okay, you're going to go through the process and try and figure out what they are. I would do 1 and 180, not going to work. 2 and 90, not going to work. 3 and 60, not going to work. You're going to keep going, and eventually you're going to land at 12 and 15, at which point you get to make up your mind as to which one's going to be negative. If I made the 12 negative, then that would make it +3. I need it to be -3. Okay, so that must mean that the 15 must be negative, right? Again, I have a simple trinomial here. So I get to rewrite this using the two factors that I just found. I'm going to go h plus 12 multiplied by h minus 15 equal to 0, which must mean h equals -12 and h equals 15. Okay. Now, both of those are solutions that satisfy this quadratic equation, but we still haven't answered the question, right? It wants to know, find the base and the height, okay? Now, again, this isn't much different than what we dealt with up here when we found two answers, one of which was negative, right? When we apply it to the context of the question, it no longer makes sense, okay? So the height cannot be negative. We cannot have a negative height. So you get to ignore this, which simply means that the height of this triangle is going to be 15 centimeters. Okay. Now, I want to find the base. How do I find the base? Base is equal to h minus 3. That's from right here. So the base of this triangle is going to be equal to 15 minus 3 is equal to 12. Okay. That's it. That's basically it for all your quadratic applications, is being able to actually take the quadratic and solve for whatever variable I'm interested in, right? So yesterday we would have saw if I wanted to solve for the independent variable versus the variable variable. Today, we just solved for x or w or whatever it was we were looking for in the question, okay? Using the quadratic equation or factoring, okay? Which you should have, at the very least, this should have given you some application of factoring and quadratic equations, okay? So that'll be it. I will give you a review tomorrow, and feel free to send me